How many of you are glad and happy to hear French from up front? This morning, one of our brothers just made a comment in the group and said, "Do you know what? We're worshiping in French. It's like we are speaking in tongues." So how many have been speaking in tongues today? And then, during the pause, some friends came and said, "Manuel, why even those who can speak French, when you go on the pulpit, you speak in English?" How can I answer? Yes, just for some technical reason and so forth. But what it reminded me is, for some, it has been too little of it. But for others, it was already too much. Especially for those who felt they were speaking tongues they did not understand. I just use this to invite us to focus on our region, Francophone Africa. But as I think even of what we are going to say, and the limited amount of French that you got to hear today, it brought me back to one of the questions that we all have had to answer during the listening period we had within the Lausanne movement as part of this process. The question that said, who else should we invite on the table? Do you remember the question? Who else should be here? Or who is missing? Because already when we are using French and English, we say that's great. And indeed, it is great. But I want to emphasize that it is not at all enough. So many people can't be part of this forum simply because they can't use French or English. And yet they are part of what God is doing. They are being mightily used by Him to advance His kingdom in all of our regions, as I believe what we are going to share tonight concerning our region of Francophone Africa, you will see it. Whenever we say English and Portuguese-speaking Africa or French-speaking Africa, we really can wonder, what region are we talking about? Because, as you can see on that map of Africa, when we say Francophone Africa, you see the whole blue zone, which is quite big. And the region is really spread. Of course, when we say that, we are referring to French as a connecting language. And what we mean, we are just talking about the countries that are former colonies of either France or Belgium. On the one hand, that's what we immediately understand. But also, we mean, and that's what the map shows, countries where French is either the official language or one of the official languages, right? And in most countries, it's one of, and not just the only language. But what we need always to understand is that in the majority of those countries, the majority of people don't even use French. we have another slide which just can give you the idea. Where you have the blue, that's where French is being used. And when you have the red, or kind of, it's where you have other languages than French being used in those countries. So you can see that there are just 2 countries where French is a bit higher, and maybe 2 others where you have almost people using both French and other languages, while in others, as you can see, people in those countries use more their native languages than French. I hope that simple picture can just help us think when we talk about missions, when we talk about advancing the gospel, the kingdom of God. What does it mean when we call ourselves a French-speaking region? I think strategically, we need to think, I won't say even twice, more than twice, to be more strategic, to make sure that those God is using, is working with, are around the table as we do this, which means, and that's what I was hinting at yesterday, we Africans, we need to learn to be uncomfortable with these European languages and accept the diversity that characterizes us. That was just about language. Think about the culture. Okay, I come from a French-speaking country, Burundi, which is in East Africa, really, next to Rwanda, next to eastern part of Congo. Because when I think of Kinshasa, which is far, far away, it's too far away. That's Central Africa. But now when you look at that first picture, you can see how the region is spread. So when you think of Sub-Saharan Africa, or the Sahel region, let's say, Mali, Niger, and so forth, just there, next to the Sahara, to me, it's a different world. And when you come down to Central Africa, Gabon, Central African Republic, part of the Congo, it's another part of the world. By the time you reach where we are, next to Uganda, to Kenya, you are in another part of Africa. And then you have to jump and go to the oceans, Madagascar, Mauritius, and so forth. You are in a different world. So I just want to touch this to show you the diversity, the vastness of the region. So for the rest, so that I won't take too much time and monopolize the microphone, I would like to invite 3 of our brothers who will touch very briefly on 2 or 3 aspects of the life of the region. I would like to invite our dear brother, Prof. Ruben Paul, just to come. He is the General Coordinator of Theological Institutions in Francophone Africa. So he will be sharing with us a bit about the theological education as one of the important aspects for us. Please take a seat. And then I would also want to invite Pastor Mignane Ndou, that you can tell is Senegalese. He's from Senegal. Please come, dear pastor. Because again, when we talk about this region, some of it is Islamic dominated, I would say, while some others are predominantly Christian. So he's one of the people who are preaching the gospel in those areas where Christians are in the minority. So we would like to hear something from him. And I would like to invite back Dr. Eraston Kigoma, He was with us in the morning. We want you back, brother. You know, the DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, with all the struggles with peace, the shalom we talk about in the morning. So very briefly, I want us to share, or just to help the brothers and sisters get to understand something. So I will switch language now. Voilà. Je vais commencer par vous, pasteur.
So I'll begin with you.
Yeah, tu peux rester assis, c'est bon. D'abord, soyez vraiment les bienvenus dans la grande famille de Lausanne.
So welcome in this very big.
Vous venez du Sénégal.
You come from.
Vous êtes pasteur dans l'Église des Assemblées de Dieu.
And you are a pastor in the Assemblies of God's Church.
Dans un contexte, je crois, où où les chrétiens sont minoritaires par rapport aux autres religions.
In a context where Christians respect to other religions.
Est-ce que tu peux nous dire, très brièvement, ça ressemble à quoi?
And
c'est quoi les défis? C'est quoi les opportunités? Très rapidement.
Briefly tell us, what it looks like. What are the challenges and what are some of the opportunities?
Merci. Je voudrais juste d'abord faire comprendre aux gens que lorsque nous parlons de l'islam,
first of all, I want people to understand that when we speak of Islam,
les gens ont tendance tout de suite à penser religion seulement.
And people have the tendency of thinking about religion only.
Mais l'islam est varié même dans sa diversité.
And Islam is diverse.
Islam modéré.
We have the moderate.
Islam syncrétiste. Islam radical. Islam intégriste.
And the integrist one.
Islam fondamental
and
avec
the fundamentalist.
de la charia.
And who are also adding the Sharia.
Mais aussi l'islam véhicule une culture.
And Islam also transmits a certain
une
culture.
Religion.
A religion.
C'est un système organisé.
And it's an organized system.
Qui véhicule une langue.
And that transmits a language.
Un système politique.
A political system.
Un système économique.
And an economical system.
Un système financier.
And the financial system.
Une civilisation et un mode de vie.
And a style of life and a style of civilization.
Quand l'Église comprend ces choses,
and when the church understands those things,
ça va l'aider à pouvoir faire une bonne approche.
It can, help the church to approach it, better.
En dehors de cette identité de l'islam,
and beyond that identity of Islam,
l'islam utilise la peur.
Islam also uses fear,
la persécution, les menaces,
and threats,
intimidations. Il utilise les finances pour acheter des gens.
And they use finances to buy
corrompre les gens.
Corruption.
Et donc, lorsque l'Église fait face à ces choses,
so when the church faces those things,
l'Église doit être capable de réagir face à cette situation-là.
The church should be able to react vis-à-vis this situation.
Et je crois,
and I believe,
le docteur Titchenou l'a dit hier.
That Dr. Titchenou spoke about it yesterday.
La partie de l'esprit.
And the part of the spirit.
Je crois que l'Église est en train de perdre encore cela.
And I think and I believe that the church is losing that.
Nous avons une église, une mission qui est arrivée au Sénégal.
And we have a church and a mission that got to Senegal.
Ils ont fait 20 ans.
And they spent 20 years
en train d'enseigner l'Ancien Testament pour ne pas tout de suite parler de Jésus.
Teaching about the Old Testament so that they don't, immediately speak about Jesus.
Et les églises qui ont vite commencé à prêcher,
and the churches who started preaching,
ont assez grandi.
Automatically, grew fast.
Ils ont fait même un mea culpa.
And they made their mea culpa.
L'église peut faire des centres d'accueil des musulmans.
And the church can actually host center of Muslims.
L'église a commencé à faire des écoles pour accéder aux enfants des musulmans.
And the church has begun to build, schools to host, children from Muslim communities.
L'église a fait des hôpitaux parce que le malade n'a pas d'identité.
They built hospitals because sick people don't have any identity.
Donc, pour ne pas aussi monopoliser, j'avais vraiment préparé beaucoup de choses, mais je suis convaincu qu'il y a de l'espoir.
And not to monopolize the word, but I had a lot to talk about, but we have hope.
Malgré les difficultés, l'Église avance.
No matter the difficulties, the challenges,
s'implante.
the church is moving forward. Churches are being planted.
Aujourd'hui, avec les réseaux sociaux,
And churches with social media,
on ne peut plus enfermer les gens.
we can't, hold people captive.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci, pasteur. C'est encourageant, n'est-ce pas?
And this is very encouraging, right?
Et maintenant, je me tourne au prof,
And I turn to Prof
du pasteur au professeur.
and to Pastor Robin.
Le pasteur dit quelque chose vraiment de très important, de très touchant, en nous décrivant ce que c'est l'islam.
And Pastor spoke about something very captivating, describing what Islam really is.
Donc, ce qui montre en quelque sorte aussi le défi du discipleship qu'on a beaucoup entendu hier.
Et cela montre and this shows the challenges of discipleship that, as we heard yesterday.
Et vous êtes responsable, vous supervisez, vous voyez comment les institutions de formation théologique
You are a
sont
leader.
dans notre région.
You oversee a lot of things, and you see how theological trainings, are in our regions.
En tenant compte de ces défis, de ce contexte, de ces réalités,
And with respect to these challenges, these realities,
quel commentaire voulez-vous faire?
what are your comments?
Quels sont les défis? Où est-ce qu'on avance? Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez partager avec nous?
What are the challenges? Are we moving forward? What can you share with us?
Je voudrais d'abord vous remercier pour l'occasion que vous nous donnez de parler des institutions bibliques et théologiques en Afrique francophone.
So thank you for the opportunity that you give me to speak about, the theological institution in Africa, in Francophone Africa.
Ces institutions sont regroupées dans un conseil qu'on appelle le Conseil des institutions théologiques
And
d'Afrique francophone.
these institutions are, gathered in one body that we call the Council of Theological Institutions.
En abrégé, CITAF.
And, in short, CITAF in French.
Le CITAF lui-même est un acquis. Et lorsque les pères ont vu l'importance de mettre en place cette structure,
So when the fathers saw the importance of putting up such a structure,
l'objectif était de créer une plateforme, un réseau d'institutions
and the objective was actually to create a network of institutions.
et le fait de mettre l'ensemble des institutions théologiques dans l'espace francophone est déjà un atout.
And to make it available, in the Francophone world to everyone.
Dans les années 2005, il y avait une cinquantaine. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes à 235 institutions regroupées en réseau pour s'entraider, se concerter et évaluer les choses.
So in the year 50s, we were about 50, and today we are over 200, gathered and networking, and we concert one another and share ideas.
Et un des plus grands atouts que nous avions, c'est d'avoir créé ce qu'on appelle un programme minimum commun à toutes ces institutions.
And one of our main things that we have and we value is to have created, a common model that we share amongst all those institutions.
Et ce standard, je pense que dans l'espace de formation théologique en Afrique, est l'unique.
And this standard in terms of, theological training in Africa is unique.
Alors, pour parler de la formation théologique,
So to speak about theological training,
je pense d'abord à deux préalables.
so I think about two things that come first.
C'est la place que l'Église, comment les églises voient la formation théologique.
So what is the place that, theological training occupies in the churches?
Que pense l'Église de la formation théologique?
What is the church thinking about theological training?
Ça, c'est un grand défi pour nous.
And this is a great challenge for us.
Et l'autre défi,
And another challenge
c'est la mauvaise compréhension entre l'étude théologique et le ministère.
And it is the wrong understanding about theological studies and ministry.
Et cela est important parce que le plus souvent, vous voyez, l'absence des femmes en milieu théologique provient de cette mauvaise compréhension.
And this is important because most of the times the absence of women in theological training comes from these wrong perceptions.
Quand on dit à une femme d'aller dans une faculté de théologie, c'est pour devenir femme d'un pasteur.
And when we ask a woman to actually attend a theological training, she thinks it is to become the wife of a pastor.
Ça provient de la mauvaise compréhension entre l'étude théologique et le ministère.
And you see the wrong understanding between theological studies and ministry.
On a même aussi des difficultés à comprendre la notion d'éducation théologique.
And we even have challenges understanding what it means, theological education.
La formation théologique a mis l'accent sur l'aspect intellectuel plutôt que sur la formation du caractère.
And theological training is much more on the character formation rather than, the intellectual training.
Les éléments que je viens de souligner sont des préalables, mais ça pose des défis.
And what I just spoke about are just preambles, but these are already challenges.
Ça aborde la question de la qualité de la formation et la qualité de l'homme conforme.
And this speaks a lot about the quality of the training and the people being trained.
Une fois que l'Église et les structures de formation se seront entendues, il faut une réforme des curricula de formation.
So once the church and the institutional training would understand themselves, we would have to revive the curriculum
qui accorde beaucoup plus d'importance la place de la femme dans la formation, la place de la femme et des jeunes dans la formation théologique.
Which will give much more importance to the place or the role of women and the youth in such training.
Vous allez voir qu'il faut assurer la relève entre les générations des théologiens.
So we have to, hold it and audit, the gap between, generational theologians.
Et tout cela a besoin d'être accompagné. Bon, je ne voudrais pas trop insister. Merci beaucoup.
So all these have to be, accompanied and supervised.
Now, I know that je sais que le temps c'est notre ennemi.
And I know that time is against us, is our enemy.
Mais quand même, il y a quelque chose qui me tient à cœur. Hein?
But there's something that I have at heart.
Vous voyez, je venais de partager avec les autres qu'en réalité, la majorité d'Africains ne parlent pas français.
And I just shared to the audience that in reality, majority of Africa doesn't speak French.
Est-ce que nos institutions de formation ont-ils pris conscience de ça? Si oui, est-ce qu'on fait quelque chose? Très brièvement.
Our institutional training aware of that? And if yes, what is being done?
Merci Emmanuel. Les institutions ont pris conscience parce qu'au niveau du CITAF, les formations partent d'abord dans nos langues maternelles. Il y a on appelle ça les formations de niveau qui s'occupent. Il y a des écoles bibliques en langue maternelle. On fait maintenant dans certaines structures la licence dans nos langues locales. Donc, mais c'est pas encore suffisamment développé. Et je crois que nous devions prendre conscience de le faire.
So I want to say that CITAF has initiated it already because the initial training is being done in the maternal language, so the local language. Just like in some public schools, they hold or maybe they train students from the beginning up to the degree level in their first language. So this is not enough, but it is a first step.
Merci beaucoup. Frère Eraston, le temps est passé, c'est vrai, mais aussi, vous étiez ici le matin, vous avez déjà partagé pas mal de choses. Mais je voudrais juste vous donner l'occasion de pouvoir ajouter quelque chose par rapport au défi de la réconciliation. Comme quelqu'un qui a les pieds au Congo, mais qui a une perspective large, en tenant compte des réalités que nous voyons aujourd'hui en Afrique de l'Ouest, au Sahel, ainsi de suite. Qu'est-ce que tu voudrais partager avec les frères et sœurs?
So, brother, I know that time is fast spent, and you were here this morning speaking about reconciliation, and as someone who, has lived in Congo and all that, what are some of the things that you would want to share with our audience this evening?
Je vais dire une chose. C'est, en fait, le défi de la réconciliation est lié au défi de la perception des conflits.
So the challenges, the reconciliations are linked to, the understanding of, the idea of conflict itself.
Je vais dire, par exemple, en Afrique centrale,
so in Central Africa,
Burundi aussi, Rwanda, l'Est du Congo et Centrafrique, le Cameroun.
Speaking about Rwanda, Central Africa and Cameroon.
Congo, Brazza et Gabon. Ce sont des pays qui sont la verdure, non seulement du continent, mais de la plupart de l'espace mondial.
So these are places or countries who represent, the green area of our continent, and why not for, most parts of the world.
Dieu utilise ces contrées pour donner la pluie au monde entier.
And God uses, that to actually, pour rain to the whole world.
Il y a plus de ça, il y a des minéraux dans ces pays et aussi dans les autres pays du Sahel, de l'Afrique de l'Ouest.
And on top of that, they have minerals in those countries and as well as, in the Sahelian countries.
Au lieu que le monde entier et les multinationales se réjouissent et pour conserver cette grande richesse qui nous partage, qui nous bénéficie à nous tous, le monde jalouse cela et participe à attiser des conflits entre des pays
and instead
et
of
entre des peuples.
Nationals, to understand that and to rejoice about this and help, harnessing those riches, they are actually jealous and contribute in the creation of conflict amongst even people.
Et dans beaucoup de cas, c'est là que vous allez trouver qu'on peut attiser un étranger pour venir acheter 80 kilomètres de terrain et commencer à défricher la forêt.
And these are some of the cases where they can actually push a foreigner to come and buy a very large portion of land
et ça amène des questions liées à la terre, liées à l'accessibilité aux champs et à l'alimentation. Et ça crée des conflits, des revanches. Et je crois la réconciliation, les défis de réconciliation.
I believe that the challenges about reconciliation
aussi de la mécompréhension
come from the ill understanding
des questions de l'Afrique francophone
of issues pertaining to Francophone Africa
par différentes tentatives d'aider l'Afrique francophone.
And through, many attempts of helping, Francophone Africa.
Un exemple simple. Quelqu'un a dit dans la salle, dans les ateliers.
And someone said during, our group
meetings. Il a vu dans un coin du pays une mission onisienne où on a amené deux pays qui sont en conflit en Asie mineure, le Pakistan et le Sri Lanka. On s'amène dans une même ville pour venir maintenir la paix.
And in one of the countries in Africa, the UN brought two countries who were actually in conflict to come as peace, keepers.
Et donc, les questions sont parfois comprises par des questions de partage et parfois comprises comme des questions de conflit entre les pays. Mais pourtant, ce sont des questions qui doivent être beaucoup réfléchies.
And sometimes we think that these issues are issues of sharing or maybe ethnic conflict, conflict amongst, ethnic people, but the reflection should be pushed much more beyond that.
Merci beaucoup, frère.
Thank you.
Vous comprenez que notamment la question de la réconciliation c'est vraiment complexe et vaste.
And as you understand, the issue of reconciliation is quite vast.
Mais j'espère que vous avez saisi que Dieu est à l'œuvre en Afrique francophone.
And I hope that you understood that God is at work in Francophone Africa.
Et son royaume avance.
And his kingdom is moving forward.
Quand on parle français, que vous devez écouter en anglais, on doit utiliser le double du temps.
And when we speak in French and you have to hear it in English, we use, our double dicton or accent.
Et par conséquent, vous avez la moitié de ce qu'on aurait dû vous dire.
And because you are getting half of what we were supposed to tell you,
Mais nous croyons que ça vous parle.
but we believe that it is speaking to you.
Dieu vous bénisse, Dieu vous
God bless you.
bénisse.